The next talk is going to be presented by my colleague from ESA, Dave Heather. And Dave, thank you for breaking your holidays and giving us an update on Prospect payload activities. So over to you, you have 10 minutes.
So I'm going to give a quick presentation today about the ESA Prospect payload, which is scheduled for launch on Luna 27. I'm doing this, of course, on behalf of the full science and industrial team, although I'm the one speaking. There are many people working behind this, of course. For those who don't really know too much about Prospect, there are two primary components on Prospect. One is the Proceed drill, and the other is the Prosper Analytical Laboratory. You can see those in the schematic shown on the bottom of the slide here. And the Prosper Laboratory itself is comprised of two smaller elements: the solid inlet system, which allows for the transfer of a sample into the laboratory, and then the analytical laboratory itself, which comprises of a number of spectrometers. In terms of objectives for Prospect, we are going to be performing a cryogenic extraction of lunar regolith from depths of down to approximately 1 meter. So we'll be sampling the subsurface and analyzing the regolith that we extract, trying to understand the abundance, the composition, and the distribution of any lunar volatiles which we find in the south polar region of the Moon. The analytical lab itself comprises of a magnetic sector spectrometer and an ion trap mass spectrometer, a whole series of ovens that we will also be able to use to ramp up to higher temperatures, so as we can do some demonstrations of in situ resource utilization, so extracting oxygen from the lunar regolith as well. So I mentioned this is being developed for flight on board the Luna 27 mission, which is scheduled for launch in 2025 and is part of an ESA and Roscosmos cooperation. We're now in phase C of this development, but we're also looking at some additional flight opportunities with some of our other international partners, such as NASA and JAXA. So this is a kind of a closer image of what the two major elements look at. The Proceed drill element is being developed by Italian industry, by Leonardo. This will be capable of acquiring samples down to approximately 1 meter. It will acquire 2 samples, the larger of which will be given to the Russian instrumentation, and a smaller sample will be extracted that will pass on to Prosper, our own European laboratory. It's not just a drill. It will also have a multispectral imaging system built into it. And there'll be a permittivity sensor within the drill that will allow for remote detection of volatiles, and some temperature sensors within the drill as well. Once we've extracted the sample, it gets passed on to the Prosper laboratory, which is the development of which is being led by the Open University. Prosper will receive the samples. It will image the samples as well with a separate imager before sealing it in the ovens and heating them, and then passing them through the various spectrometers, which I've already mentioned. One slide just to highlight the development status of where we are with each of these major elements. For Proceed, we had a successful demonstration of the full capabilities of the drill design at the end of 2019. So we were drilling into lunar simulant and extracting samples. We had some anorthositic inclusions within our drilling area as well, just to make sure that the drill was capable of passing through those. For Prosper, for the laboratory, all of the key elements are being tested individually and prototyped at the moment. So this includes the camera, the solid inlet system, and the spectrometers. And in general, we have a detailed design ongoing. As I said, we've just entered phase C, so the detailed design, which is ongoing, and we have dedicated testing of each of the components and the units. We're looking specifically, of course, at survival testing for extreme temperatures that we expect to encounter when we get to the Moon. Also, environmental compatibility and the lifetime testing, making sure that we can survive the colder temperatures and hopefully survive overnight as well on the Moon. and looking at the dust compatibility. We had some recent measurements, for example, from the science team of the camera, which was specifically looking at the dust compatibility and the dust coverage that we will be able to tolerate. You can see over on the right-hand side, which may be of interest here, some schematics of the drill itself. And you'll see that for the drill, once we get down to a certain depth, then the sampling tools will be deployed. The Russian sampling tool is the larger tool you can see on the right-hand side. And once we've reached the depth that we would like, then there is a very small push tube, which is deployed from the base of the drill that will extract the smaller sample to be passed onto the Prosper Analytical Laboratory. One slide on some of the science support activities which we are covering at the moment. You'll see on the right-hand side a photograph which from Hannah Sargent, from some work that she completed last year. There's a link to the publication there as well for those who are interested in reading more. Hannah used this setup that you can see in the photograph to basically do a proof of concept, let's say, of the evolved gas analysis that we are hoping to use Prosper to complete. So we used some hydrogen reduction to successfully demonstrate the capabilities of Prosper for evolved gas analysis, and also to extract oxygen from the lunar simulants. So it's a proof of concept of the full capabilities of the Prosper Analytical Laboratory in that respect. The results also showed that there was a very strong correspondence between the ilmenite content of the sample that was being tested and the oxygen that was the yield of oxygen that was extracted from the analysis. So ilmenite will be a key marker for us when we're doing our ISIU studies. In addition to that, we are continuing to work on thermal modeling throughout the complete sampling and drilling chain, because it's of course very important that we try to preserve as many volatiles as we possibly can from the sample through to the extraction and analysis. We are hoping to minimize the volatile loss to less than 35% if we can. And that will allow us to still take some feasible measurements and to look at the volatile content of the original sample. We're also looking at the magnitude and the impact of all of the potential contaminants within the full cycle of analysis. And we're looking at prioritizing the prospect operations, so trying to maximize the science return whilst we're minimizing the resources that we're using in terms of time and power and data. One final thing that we also need to bear in mind is we are a static lander. So where we land is very important, and the attitude that we land is also very important. So the attitude of the lander. So we are doing some work to characterize the landing site. This is extremely complex, of course, because of the topography and the complex illumination situation at the South Pole. So we're trying here to balance the science objectives with the operational constraints. We need to be somewhere which will allow us to have enough sunlight for power and communications, but will be dark enough for volatile preservation for us to try to maximize our chances of sampling volatiles. So this work is ongoing. We've done quite a lot of work, as you can see from the map on the left-hand side, looking at various models for volatile preservation of what we would expect to see in terms of volatiles in illumination, and the 8 candidate landing sites that we have with our Russian partners. What we need to do now is try to time resolve these with the expected landing time and the lifetime, let's say, of Prospect on the lunar surface. This is being done in parallel to some work on the radiative environment and the complex lunar polar illumination conditions from Oxford University. They have developed a thermal model which we're weaving into the landing site characterization. 1 minute, Dave. Yeah, my final slide. So basically where we are at the moment, Prospect is currently being prepared for flight on Luna 27 in 2025. We're also actively pursuing some further opportunities for prospect and associated hardware, one of which is, for example, the exospheric mass spectrometer, or EMS, which is going to fly on the NASA Astrobotic mission scheduled for launch early next year. And if you have any questions, then I'm very happy to take them at the end of the session.
Thank you very much, Dave. And once again, much appreciated that you gave us the talk despite being on holidays.
Not a problem at all.